Everyone, in today's video, I'm going to talk about the latest character that's been added to the game, which is Griffon Minos. Now, Griffon Minos is a dark assassin character, but out of all of the assassin character, he is possibly more on the defensive side. He has slightly higher defense than others, but lower attack. And when we actually go through his skills, you can kind of see he doesn't actually do too much damage himself. Well, actually, no, he does do damage, but unlike other assassin knights who kind of do like burst, single target, high amount of damage, Minos is more on kind of the control side and also kind of like slow damage, kind of like damage over time, to be honest, which is quite interesting. But yeah, so as usual, I'm going to go through all of his skills, his clothes, his constellation, talk a bit about whether you want to pull on him or not, and also finish off the video with some screenshots on how to clear off his trial stages. Now let's start off with his ultimate. Yeah, his ultimate basically is single target. It doesn't actually do damage by any damage by itself, but what it is able to do is control that enemy. And during that time, the control enemy is going to attack its allies. So very similar to, for example, what Sea Dragon Cannon, Gemini Cannon, Saga Light, all of them are able to do by all of the Geminis. So it does have that effect, but it's a slightly upgraded version of their controls because not only the controlled ally will attack its teammates, you're also going to transfer of the damage taken by Minos to that person. And also with his clothes, first of all, it's going to be extended to 8 seconds, which is a really, really long time. And also of the Cosmo and the HP healing for that target is actually going to be passed to Minos instead. So it's a very, very strong single target control effect. Like purely from control perspective, it's possibly the best control effect ability anyone have, but it's only a single target. So that's something you have to bear in mind. And that kind of means that, for example, if you're up against a team which is relying on only one DPS, for example, like if the enemy have like a say go close, etc., and just one say go close, no other DPS, then yeah, Griffon Minos is going to do really, really well against them. But if the enemy do have multiple sources of actually doing attack, then Minos is not going to be as effective. Alright, so that's his ultimate. Then we move on to his skill 2, which is a looping skill. This one's a bit of like a jack of all trades. A purified debuff, which is not bad, but to be honest, there's loads of like skills in the game which are able to purify debuff now. So there's nothing special either. It provides damage reduction by 75%, which is really a long time. But it's only for 2.5 seconds. So that's sorry, 75% is really high, like damage reduction wise, but it's only for 2.5 seconds, so that's really short. So it's a bit weird there. You do increase your Cosmo, which is quite nice because basically you increase by 500 per 0.5 seconds. So essentially you're gonna get 2,500 extra Cosmo, which is going to be very good because it helps towards your ultimate. And like I said, the ultimate is actually really strong control effect. So it is actually pretty good at that perspective. And you are also able to knock back the target by 1 second. So it just have loads of different ability to it, which can be interesting in very different situations, but it's a bit hard to pinpoint exactly what's the main selling point, I guess. But it's definitely not bad skill in any sense. Then we move on to skill 3. This is an opening skill, but to be honest, it's going to be active throughout the entire battle. Basically, what's going to happen is you will link to the enemy with the highest HP percentage, and every single time when you do a skill attack, the enemy is going to take a bit of damage. And also, you're going to reselect the target every 10 seconds. Now, here it says you're only going to do that damage when you inflict other skill skill attack. But actually, if you actually have 9 out of 9 constellation, it's going to be whenever you do normal attack as well. And that's actually going to be a lot because what this essentially means is that you pretty much do normal attack every 1 or 2 seconds, and basically that basically means whoever you are linking to, it's going to take a bit of a damage, which is up to 500% of your attack every 2 seconds, which is actually really, really strong. Now, the only drawback for this is that it links to the enemy with the highest HP percentage. Now, this normally, if you just look at game mechanic, I almost think it's very similar to Taurus Aldebaran's bounce effect, because, for example, every single time when you do something, the enemy take damage. But Taurus Aldebaran choose the enemy with the lowest HP, and that helps a long way for you to actually make sure you are able to kill off someone. Whereas Minos choose the one with the highest HP percentage, and what that normally means is yes, you can do a bit of damage, but you will never be able to do enough to actually kill someone off, which is kind of the annoying side of this. And then we have skill 4, which is once again, it's kind of like a bit of like damage over time kind of thing. And this is basically whenever any enemy accumulate damage over 600% of your attack, you're going to do up to 200% of your attack. And this is actually true damage, just the typo here. But yeah, it's like a true damage, so ignore defense. So once again, this kind of just shows what I was talking about earlier. If you actually look at Minos' attack, not many of it actually do damage itself. Like the first one doesn't do any damage, it controls the enemy. The second one, yes, you do damage, but it's only 150% of attack, so it's like hardly much damage. The third one, you don't do any damage yourself, it's just the enemy is going to take damage when you do normal attack. And then the fourth one, once again, the enemy is just going to take some damage every now and then. So you kind of see why Minos have really low attack in terms of assassin, because it doesn't actually rely on himself to attack. It kind of just like slowly take away HP on the opponents, like bit by bit from one of his skills, but it just kind of really lacks the burst damage that most assassin characters are able to offer, which is a bit strange. So that's kind of why I mentioned up front, like don't think of Minos as like a traditional assassin. He works slightly different, and a lot of the damage he inflicts actually helps if you have a long battle rather than like a short burst battle. So that's kind of something you have to bear in mind. Now, when we move on to his clothes, the first one is that skill 2, rather than just removing debuff, you're also going to be immune to control and the interruption effect. And also the second one is also going to dispel the enemy's buff. Now, both of them are pretty good, but first of all, the skill 1, you're immune to control and interruption. The duration is only 2.5 seconds, so like I said, it's actually really short duration. The second ability, you're able to dispel enemy buff. That is actually really nice. But once again, there are loads of characters who are able to dispel buff now. For example, like Sean Goklos, who's like the number one meta character who you see everywhere. So I just feel like there's a lot of overlap. So there's nothing extra Minos is able to offer. Um, Level 20, like I said, 8 seconds, really, really long time. So definitely recommend you go for this. And also level 30, you're actually able to transfer the Cosmo and HP healing. And that's actually going to be really useful, especially the Cosmo aspect. Because like I said, this is actually a really, really strong ultimate. And to be honest, this is kind of Minos' main selling point. So you definitely want to inflict ultimate as many times as possible, and transferring that Cosmo is definitely going to help. So I do think if you do want to build up Minos, you really do want level 30 here. Now, in terms of constellation, the first one, this is to do with his skill 4. So basically, rather than accumulate up to 600% of attack, now it's actually 500, so slightly lower threshold, but hardly make any difference. 9 out of 9 is what I mentioned earlier. You're actually able to inflict damage with all of your normal attack rather than skill attack, which is definitely very much needed because, like I said, this is the only skill attack he have which can actually inflict damage. So normally your skill 3, if you're relying on his skill 3 to do damage without upgrading his constellation, you're hardly gonna see anything. But now with constellation, you're actually able to trigger this like every 2 seconds, which is actually going to be really strong. And also this actually makes Minos really good for boss battle as well. I'm pretty sure this works on boss, and basically what that means is every 2 seconds, you're going to chip away like up to 500% of your attack onto the boss. So that's actually really nice. So it's I don't think his damage output is going to be as crazy as, let's say, Seiya Goku's, but certainly one of the higher damage dealing boss characters if you do want to get him for that reason. Alright, so now we went through of his skills, etc. Is he going worth building? Now, his ultimate is really strong, the best control effect, but single target. So I guess it kind of means that if you're going into PvP, now first of all, like in PvE, Minos is not going to be very good because in PvE, all of the enemies is going to hit really hard. So there's nothing Minos can really help there. Like everyone's normal attack can kill you, so Minos is not going to do anything for you, and he doesn't do enough burst damage to actually help you there. And you are not going to go into a long battle in PvE either, so you can't really wait for all of his damage to stack up from his skill 3 or skill 4. So Minos is definitely really bad for PvE, story progression, etc. In PvP, it can work, but only if the enemy only have a one single DPS, in which case your ultimate is always gonna be able to control that enemy DPS, and therefore you have huge advantage over them. So if most of the PvP meta team you are facing relying on a single DPS such as say a Gold Cross, etc., then you can. But in all honesty, I wouldn't suggest you get him for PvP purpose either because yes, that may work right now, but your opponent can easily just bring a second DPS in order to counter Minos. So I do feel like in PvP selection, he is somewhat like only good for very niche scenarios and very easy to be countered. So I'm not a great fan of him in PvP either. And in terms of boss battle, yes, he do a lot of damage. Possibly the second highest damage dealing. I mean, I don't have anything to back up my theory, but purely from what he's able to offer from his skill 3, I'm gonna guess he's possibly able to do the second highest damage in boss battle after Seiya Gold Close. But I still think Seiya Gold Close have way more versatility over Minos in kind of all the game modes. So from that perspective, I don't recommend you getting him for boss either. Like unless you, for example, miss Seiya Gold Close completely and you really need a boss character. But in all honesty, you can probably just borrow a Seiya Gold Close from someone else. So I don't think there's too much extra he's able to offer from the boss battle department either. So that's kind of why overall Minos is not someone I'm gonna hugely recommend. I definitely don't think he's a bad character, but I just don't think he really shines enough to justify you pulling for him. Especially considering the other two characters on the banner is Sean Goldclaws and Hugo Goldclaws, who are probably, in my opinion, was definitely within the top 3 characters in the game right now. So, if you put all of them into perspective, I just don't see any reason why you want to pull on Minos right now. Like, even if you wait for the next banner, when Minos is going to repeat and come back, Hugo Gold Close is still going to be there, and I would still recommend you go after Hugo Gold Close. And if you're going to miss out on Minos for 2 consecutive banners, there's just not much point of actually building him anymore because you won't get him to very high level. So that's kind of why overall I just think you should definitely skip him. Now you can still summon on this banner, but do it for Sean Gold Close or Hugo Gold Close instead, rather than kind of wasting your resource on Minos.